that we have our revenue plan nailed and we know how we're going to produce that revenue through what customers and at what time, we need to go on from there and turn this into a full-blown profit and loss projection. Now, the term that's used for looking forward is pro forma. So this is your pro forma P&L. But it's a format you're already familiar with. We're going to continue to use that business process format because it makes it really clear why we're doing what we're doing, why we're spending the money, when we spend it, for what purpose. And it helps us loop back and make sure as we watch the performance happen, whether those investments are paying off. Now, an interesting thing about getting the revenue done first is it actually drives every other category on your P&L. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Your cost of goods, pretty straightforward. When you sell something, you have to produce it. So those direct costs are going to be proportional and are going to land right there on your P&L to let you calculate your gross profit. But the other categories are also driven from revenue. For example, research and development is an investment in future revenue. So when you write down a decision on your P&L that we're going to invest X dollars, $200,000, whatever that is, in this year for R&D, we're also going to put a sticky note on it and say the return I get from that investment should show up in 18 months by what mechanism? Make the notes that plan for revenue based on each of these investments. Same can be said for marketing, sales, and your G&A. These are all investments in future revenue, and if you're not thinking of them that way, you're not going to come up with the right number. We want a number that makes sense in terms of investments we need to be making to achieve all those strategic milestones. Taxes, of course, are a consequence of profits. So again, it's tied to getting the revenue projected right, as well as your costs. And interest is just a form of payment for the capital you employ to do all those other things for your business. So again, everything hinges off of getting revenue right and then making sure that your entire organizational roadmap, your entire action roadmap, has the right costs associated with it, and so you're being realistic about the amount of that money that's going to drop to the bottom line. We put that into this model, and that's where we get the first chance to make sure that our strategic objectives are being supported in financial terms. I told you earlier, you don't have to be a finance guy to figure this out, and you don't. This is just making a common sense linkage between what you say you're going to accomplish, how much money it's going to cost you to do it, how far in advance you have to make some of those investments to make it happen. And all of that is very straightforward. It's not about being an accountant. It's not about being a financial guru. But I'll tell you what, your credibility with the financial guru will skyrocket when you can take that level of ownership for how you're going to use money to build this dream. So we just lay it out on a spreadsheet, and then I've stuck a picture of a Post-it note on this slide, but you know how to do that in Excel, where you can make detailed notes about every cell on that sheet. And I recommend that you have a page of notes about every cell on that spreadsheet so that you know how you got to that number when you come back to it. One of the most deceiving things that made possible by Microsoft is make it really easy to copy formulas and multiply times 1.17 and drag that across and just see this wonderful growth in revenue or decrease in cost. Don't do that. Put in every cell by hand when you're making your first pro forma. Make yourself think through exactly why is this number going to change from the time period before it. If you take the time to think that through and can justify it and make your notes, you will have a sound financial plan that matches what you said you're going to do. And then when you do that, you can step back and learn a couple things. The obvious one you're going to learn is how good a business is this to be in? What is that bottom line? How is it changing over time? If I had to invest $20 million to get this started, is that return going to make sense? These macro evaluations, return on investment, that apply to your business as a whole are the kind of things you expect to be able to learn, an insight you want to gain from doing the spreadsheet. But there's a whole nother level of detail that you need to get, and that has to do with in individual investments that you're making. So when you put in, you find out that it's going to cost you $10,000 to create that e-commerce website or whatever that number is that you now have a realistic cost in, and you think about, you pull off of that map, okay, when is that supposed to pay back, and what evidence do I have it'll pay back at what rate? Then you can also do that kind of financial return calculation on each of those little pieces, and that's the kind of insight that you need to gain. Now, let me tell you how that can change and actually shape your thinking about how you approach this business. When we start out with a business model and a channel discussion, how am I going to execute on a given part of the business? And then we say, okay, we're going to take these actions. When you get down into this detailed level and you compare the cost to the benefits on a detailed level, it can make the difference between what you thought was the most efficient way to go after that opportunity versus another way that could be more efficient. So use this as a tool, not just to justify what you want to do, i.e. raise money, but use it as a tool to give you insight as to, is this the right way to go get this revenue? Is this the right way to build this impact I want to have in the marketplace? So when you've done that, and you've wrung all the insight you can get out of the macro and the micro picture, and you're comfortable that this plan makes sense financially from top to bottom, then we can go on to the next step of summarizing that for other people to read, and that's what we're going to talk about next time.